Hi there, and welcome along to Fenton Elliott Solicitors. I'm Chris Sutton, and I'm here with Simon Fenton, head of the employment law team. And I want to talk, Simon, today about grievances at work. So a lot of people might have issues at work. They might have that Monday morning feeling about not wanting to go in, but often it's deep-rooted in something and there's a real problem that they just bury for ages and ages. When it reaches that point, they want to raise it and do something about it. Who should they talk to and when?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting way you put that, because in a sense, if it's got to the point where somebody's raising a grievance, it's almost too late. So workplaces are complicated. There are hierarchies, there are entrenched views, there are power structures, there's lots of stuff that goes on. And sometimes people struggle. Sometimes people throw their weight around in a way that they wouldn't be allowed to at home. Sometimes they're very aware of their status, and that's a big thing, and other people suffer at that. Some people were bullies at school and they're bullies at work, right? That's the nature of them. And really, if there's a problem, my advice to an employee would be try to resolve it sooner rather than later, before it kind of spirals. And that might be having a word with the person and saying, I'm really uncomfortable about something or other, would you mind? I mean, if they're sensible and reasonable, the response is probably along the lines of, I had no idea, I'm sorry, of course, I won't do that anymore. But if that doesn't work, or if they don't do that, because that's quite confrontational, you would have a word with HR. If there's an HR person or team, you'd probably raise it with HR. HR like to start a grievance process with trying to informally resolve matters, which is them acting as an intermediary, getting involved and saying, look, did you know that Terry in accounts is unhappy about something or other, and try and resolve it like that. Again, I don't know how often that is successful, because they're not the ones we get to see, right? We get to see the ones that go seriously off the rails. But for an employee's point of view, raising a grievance puts a marker. It's a documented evidence of a problem at work, such that they can at a later point bring it up. From an employer's point of view, these are very interesting, because if you uphold somebody's grievance, Christmas parties, right? There's a Christmas party. The young woman that started 3 months ago says she was harassed at the Christmas party. If you investigate and find that she was harassed at the Christmas party, you've just given her a claim at an employment tribunal of sexual harassment, which you found yourself, right? So there's very often a tension there for an employer to deal with these things impartially.
That almost seems manifestly unfair, does it not?
It's difficult. It is difficult. The other problem that happens with grievances is that if somebody raises a grievance against their fellow worker, and them and that fellow worker and then possibly one or two witnesses get involved, that can ruin a relationship going forward as well. So it's not something to embark upon lightly. What I have found in recent years is that younger workers and employees who are newer to the workforce are quicker to go to grievances.
Really?
Yeah, much quicker to enforce their rights, much quicker to see a process and think, this is the process, and I'm going to go do that. Where an informal chat might actually have been better. Now, I'm not saying I've got a statistically significant sample, but my experience is that that's happening kind of more and more.
Is that a change to work attitude, do you think?
Yeah. There's definitely I'm not entirely sure about Gen Z and millennials and all this kind of stuff, but there is definitely we want more than just some money to come in here. We'd like to be doing purposeful work. We'd like respect. We'd like a work-life balance. And those things are much more on people's minds. When I started work in the 80s, You came in, you did what you were told. You didn't go until they said you could go. And then you came back and you did it again. And I was a bit after you called everybody in a more senior position, sir or madam, but not much. And there was definitely a clarity of perspective. The other thing is, of course, everybody's on first name terms. And for younger workers who are inexperienced in the kind of the disciplines of work, that can feel like we're all mates.
Yes.
And we're not all mates, we're colleagues. And there's a difference. And younger people are struggling. Young people have always struggled with that, but they kind of picked it up probably more quickly in the past.
Okay. Well, let's look at it from the other perspective. Let's think about it from an employer's point of view. How should employers be tackling when it looks like a formal grievance is being raised, or it looks like the early stages of one?
Yeah. Don't ignore it is the first thing. The temptation is to try to resolve it without documenting anything and seeing it, and then it just spirals. And he said, well, we had a chat. And if at a later point you have to evidence that, well, where are the notes of this conversation? Was it? We just had a chat by the water cooler, and they said they were all right. So that doesn't really work. If somebody is going to raise a grievance, or you think they might raise a grievance, it's generally speaking a good idea to say, would you like to raise a grievance? Would you like us to investigate this formally? And when and if they say yes, then do it. Properly investigate. And if for example, the grievance is against somebody in HR, not unheard of, there are plenty of external consultants who you can hire to kind of come in and investigate in a neutral way, who are experienced with this kind of stuff and who will do it. And even if it's not about HR, generally speaking, people in HR have got a full-time job, right? And this is quite a big project that gets lashed onto their full-time role, and you don't want it done in a haphazard or fast way. You want it done properly. So again, sometimes it's a good idea to bring in an external consultant to do it.
There's a point of finding the right time to reach out to a third party, right? Whether that's a HR professional third party, or whether that's someone like yourself, Simon.
Yeah, well, we can certainly help with process in that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, typically where we might come in is somebody's going through a redundancy consultation exercise, and they say, right, well, look, we've got 5 people, and because of AI, we just need 3 people now. And I'm afraid we've been through a selection exercise, and you're not, one of the 2 lowest performing employees, so it's likely that you're going to get selected for redundancy. And then they raise a grievance. They say it's because I'm black. No, you're one of only. No, it's not because you're black. I think it's because I'm black. I want to raise a grievance. And then you get a redundancy consultation exercise, and crossing with a grievance process. And then, can you finish the redundancy consultation exercise with anybody until you finish the grievance? Because if the grievance is upheld, then perhaps somebody else would drop into the bottom 2, right? And then somebody else would be selected. So that can gum up the works quite a lot. Typically, those are the issues. A straightforward grievance is not something I can do it, but it's generally not that complicated. You follow the process, you investigate, you talk to people, you get a report done. It's when you have this confluence of one process intersecting with another that it gets quite complicated.
That's when it's a minefield.
Yeah, that's when it gets complicated.
But the key message is having good processes, and you can help with putting those processes in place, and then following them. Don't ignore it.
Don't ignore it. Yeah, don't ignore it. Deal with it. Try and deal with it humanely and sensibly. But again, here's another example of where it's difficult. An employee says, my boss is a bully. I'm going to raise a grievance against my boss for bullying. Now, what do you do with the boss in the meantime? If they carry on working together, could the boss bully the people, the employee has said are witnesses to this, to say, if you say anything to HR about this investigation, you're next. So what do you do with the person against whom the grievance has been raised? In cases of bullying, you would suspend them. Suspending them is considered to be, by a lot of people, a hostile act, right? You've suspended me. I haven't done anything. I'm just trying to get a greater performance out of my team. Right? All of a sudden, it gets very messy. So that's the kind of thing we'd come in to advise on.
Goodness me. There's a lot of things to cover here, and I guess every case is different.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's great. You know this. That's what's great about the job, right? Every case is different. All people are different. You're using your skill and experience of doing something like this before and applying it to these new set of facts. And, you know, most of the time we've seen the beginning, middle and end and aftermath of something similar. So we can predict how this is likely to go. And that prediction based on experience means that you can trim your advice to take account of what whoever your client actually ultimately wants. So that's one of the questions I will ask at the beginning with most clients, which is, you know, what do you want? And that's the one question that most clients struggle with. I just want it not to have happened. Well, let's assume it has happened.
If only we could all go back in time.
If only we could. It's happened. So this is where we are. What's a good outcome for you? And sometimes they know, and sometimes they have to have a think about it and come back to me.
So, presuming you don't have a DeLorean to go back in time and change it, and you have a grievance issue at work, either with your employee or one of your employees, reach out to Simon and his team at Fenton Elliott Solicitors, and they'll be able to guide you the right way.